It's a joy to be back with you. Some of the most cherished moments that I've had here at the Forest Hill congregation is always at retreat. Something always happens on retreat. I see Edison smiling at me too. Something always happens at retreat, but we always enjoy the time that we have together, the time of spiritual growth and the time just to be with one another. I wish you could see the faith of them just grow through that weekend. We have a great bunch of young people here, and I know that we are very thankful to have them. By show of hands, how many here have ever worried about something? Everybody's hand is up. Second question, how many people are worried about something right now? Some still hands raised. Let's imagine this. Let's imagine you and I, we tried to find the cure for this worry. So we go around and we go to every doctor that we know. Can you help me? Doctor doesn't give us what we want, so we go to the next doctor. Still can't give me what I want. So we go around the entire United States to try to find the answer to this problem. We go to psychologists, we go to psychiatrists, we go to therapists. Anything you can name of, we go to that person to try to fix our problem. But we still end up with not the right answer that we want. And so one day we meet a man, and this man has the same problem that we have, but this man, his problem is solved. And we ask, how did you solve it? We've been looking forever to find how to solve this problem. How did you solve yours? And this man does this. He opens up his Bible, and he says, let's start here in Psalm chapter 37. So if you will, let's turn there. Psalm chapter 37. And just for the next few minutes, we will discuss the worry remedy. How do we get rid of that problem of worry that we have? You see, at times when we worry about things, if you're like me, you worry to the extreme. You put things in situations and you make things real that's not real. You start to put situations in your mind, well, if I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, this will happen. If I don't do this, then this will happen. And you put so many situations in your mind, and you cause more worry upon the worry that you already have. But David here gives us a formula, gives us a solution, gives us a remedy to get rid of that worry that you and I have. Now let's look at this. The first thing he says, let's start in verse number 3. Trust in the Lord and do good, and he shall dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Now let's notice this. What does the word trust mean? The word trust is defined as to have confidence or to be bold in something. So did you know that we can have that confidence in the Lord? Now, who wrote this psalm? See, at the bottom of my number 37, it says it's a psalm of David. What was David? He was a shepherd. Shepherds shepherd over sheep. In our Psalms class in the school, we went through the book of Psalms, and we talked about physical sheep, how they're loud animals, how they're annoying animals. They can get on your nerves, and that's why the Lord compares us to sheep. We can get that way sometimes. But did you know that physical sheep, in order to feel secure, they won't lie down unless they're free from all their fear? Did you know that physical sheep won't lie down unless they feel free from friction within the flock? Did you know physical sheep won't lie down if they feel like something on the outside is going to get them? Did you know physical sheep won't lie down if they feel like they can't be fed? You see, the psalm in Psalm 23, also a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Watch this. He maketh me to lie down. So, if we trust in the Lord, he can give you and I that comfort that we want, that comfort that we desire. Look at the end of the verse. Trust in the Lord and do good. Why? So shalt thou dwell in the land. And watch this. Just like physical sheep and the shepherd, And verily, truly, yes, thou, you and I, shall be fed. The Lord is my shepherd. Trust in the Lord and do good. First part of the remedy there. Okay, so we agree with this man that we've met. All right, so what else do I need to do? I've trusted in the Lord. I have down the first step. What's next? Number 2, let's go down to the next verse. The Bible says, delight thyself also in the Lord. Now, delight has a couple different meanings here, but they all fit. The first one means luxurious. You see, have you ever looked at something that's decorated so beautifully and you saw how amazing that was, and you didn't even want to touch anything because you think you might mess it up because how beautiful it is? The psalmist here says, delight thyself in the Lord. Look at him that way. Don't we sing the song, I stand in awe of you? You are beautiful beyond description. You're too marvelous for words, too wonderful for comprehension, like nothing ever seen or heard. Delight thyself in the Lord. Another meaning means to be soft or to be pliable. Now, I was confused when I first read this. Like, why does it mean soft and pliable? I don't understand. But then I remembered. There was one time I was in college, and we had to take a art appreciation course. And everybody took that course because they thought it was going to be an easy A. But we were very surprised that it was not an easy A. But the potter, he showed us how to make pottery. And he sat down and he had his wheel about the size of this pulpit. And he looked at us, didn't say a word, and he had a cookie sheet full of clay. All the clay looked exactly the same. But he picked one up and he squeezed it a little bit, put a little water on his thumb, started to knead it just a little bit. He thought he looked satisfied. And so he had the clay, and then he threw the clay against the ground, picked it up, threw it against the ground again, picked it up, threw it against the wall the third time, and then he started putting it on that wheel. And the clay seemed like it was working, but every time he almost formed it, it would always crumble. And he tried over and over and over, and eventually he threw that away because it didn't work. But then he took another piece while the wheel was still spinning, did the same thing, threw it on the wheel, and this man was about 6'7". So he takes the clay, and you could see the handle starting to form, and the clay is molding exactly how he wants it. So then the potter steps back and stands up, and he makes a vase as tall as he is within a matter of seconds. That's how pliable that clay is, because that clay was moldable in that potter's hand. You see, the song that we sing, have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter. What are we? I am the clay. Mold me and make me after my will, right? After thy will. While I'm waiting, yielded and still. You see, what are we like? Are we like that? Are we like that clay where the master constantly has to go over and over and over and try to re-knead it? Or are we like that clay where you throw it on the wheel, instantly you're willing to work with him? You see, the clay, none of the clay was perfect, but the potter is. And the potter made exactly what he wanted out of that clay. To delight thyself in the Lord. Now look at it. Here's the last meaning of that. It also means to expect all your happiness from God himself. You see, where do we try to find our happiness? What do we delight ourselves in? Some people delight themselves in their money. Some people delight themselves in women. Some delight themselves behind the bottle. Solomon tried all of it. What did he say? It's all vanity. You see, people do those things to have a desire that they crave. They believe that those things will match that craving. But watch this. The Lord loves you and I. He knows every hair that's on our head. He knows your desire. Now look at the end of the verse. Delight thyself also in the Lord. Watch. And he, God, what's he going to do? He will give thee the desire of your heart. You see, the Lord knows exactly what you want. He knows exactly what you need. But here's the question. Are you going to delight in him? Or are you going to go the Abram route? Genesis 15. Abram, a son's going to come through your loins. Yes, Lord, I believe in you. Chapter 16. Sarah says, maybe God meant through Hagar. No, God said it will come through you. He wasn't patient. She wasn't patient. Henceforth, problem. You see, they took it into their own hands. You see, we can't be like that as the clay. We must let God continue to mold us. Okay, so we've trusted, we've delighted. What's next on the remedy list? 3, commit thy way unto the Lord. Now, when I think of commitment, I thought this meant giving 100% to. If you have a child and you say, well, you can play this sport, but I want you to give 100% to. I want you to give everything you have. That's what I thought this meant. But commit here means something else. It means to cast thy burden upon or to roll upon. You think about the priests and the scribes. They had giant rolls of scrolls that they would use to write things down. And they couldn't just open it like a book like we do. They had to roll it out on a table. Watch how the Lord compares that to you. Commit thy way to the Lord. Everything that you want and worry about, just like that scroll, you lay all that out in front of the Lord. You see, we feel like we have to generalize things with him. Well, Lord, this is happening and please help. This is happening, Lord, please help. The Lord wants to know exactly what's going on. Be specific with him. Lay everything out and roll it in front of him. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust in him, and then he'll bring it to pass. Okay, so this sounds good, but how do we know this works? And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. See, this verse here reminds me of Job. You see, remember, everything was taken away from him. Then his so-called friends turned on him and started blaming him and blaming God. But do you ever read in the book of Job to where Job was ever bitter against God? The Bible says Job kept his integrity throughout all of it. Here's one thing and one side note that I want to mention. When we study the book of Job, I get one meaning out of it. In the book of Job, we see Satan's best hand. He throws everything that he has at Job. That's Satan's best shot. But here's the thing. Satan, as a brotherhood and on an individual basis, can give you his best shot. But the book of Job shows me that through faith, I can still beat him. He can throw everything that he has at you, everything that he has at me. But through faith, there's no way he can win. How amazing is that? Part of the worry remedy. Okay, so that sounds good, but what's the last part? There's one more part of this. The man looks at us and said, this is the last thing that you need to do. You can trust all you want. You can delight all you want. You can commit all you want. But this last step, if you don't have all of them, it will not work. You will end up going back to square one and worrying all over again. What do I need to do? Last verse. Rest. But rest how? Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospers in the way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. Have you ever seen a child and the mother is maybe in a convenience store and there's the sitting section, and he says, I want you to sit here. I want you to wait for me. I'm just going to go check out. I'll be right back. That child will sit in that seat. A minute goes by, a child starts getting antsy. Child starts moving. Maybe the child will start crying. He can see mom's right there, but he starts getting restless. I'm right here. Just wait. You see, the Lord does the same thing for us. You see, he says, wait for me. I'll give you the desires of your heart. Wait for me. Trust in me. Commit in me. I'll give you everything that you want. Just wait. But we start getting restless. Lord's not here. He's not answering my prayers when I want. He didn't give me what I asked him to give me. I don't think the Lord cares. And we're already back to square one, worrying again and again and again. But he says, after you do all that, you rest and you wait for me. And while you're resting, waiting, don't look around at everybody else that's prospering. You see, that's where it gets us to. And we look at the world, don't we? The world's doing so much evil, and it seems like they prosper and prosper and prosper. And look at me, I'm trying to do the best that I can, and nothing's happening. So why try? Why try to keep being good? I guess I'll go to that side. I'll get what I want. Rest in me and wait patiently. Cease from anger and forsake wrath, and fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. Lord says, just wait. Trust me, and I'll bring it to pass. So we think this sounds good. We talked to this man. We said, okay, how did this work for you? He said, well, I just followed the steps and it worked. He said, you should do it too. So we walk away. This is the last option that we have to fix our worry. And we question ourselves and we say, well, how do we know this works? How do we know that this worry remedy can help us? David was the writer of this psalm. Look at all the worries that David had. Number one, David was betrayed by his friends. I'd be worried about that. David was hunted by the king who he helped by killing Goliath. Now Saul's after you. I'd be worried about that too. David was accused of wrongdoing. I'd be worried about that. David was betrayed and forsaken by his own son. I'd be worried about that too. David lost a loved one, lost a child. I'd really be worried about that. But through all of this, did you notice that David, the writer of this psalm, he went back to his own remedy? I trusted, I delighted, I committed, and I rested, and I waited, and the Lord helped me. But every time he got away from those five, what happened? He took it into his own hands. Every single time. But when he got back to his own remedy, the Bible says, and David repented, and he went forward. Remember Acts 13:22? What do they call David? A man after God's own heart. You see, we can fail, yes. But if we go back to this remedy every time, we can make it through. You see, worry is a part of us as humans, yes. But that doesn't have to be a lifestyle for us. You see, we can do this just like David did. We can have that rest that the Bible speaks of. Well, maybe you've been worrying about things. You see, worry is also a sign of distrust in the Lord at times. You see, as second-year students, I was talking to some of my classmates. All of us are in one of two places. We're trying to stay focused here on what we're trying to do in the school. But within the next 60, 70 days, we don't know what's going to happen. It scares us. As preachers of the gospel, it does scare us. But we know that if we keep on trusting this right here, he'll help us. We don't know when, we don't know how. But if we keep on serving him, and if individually, if we trust him, if we delight in him, commit, and rest, he's got us. And he's got you too. Maybe you haven't been following this. Maybe you just totally been worried about things and not trusting and depending on the Lord. He wants his child to depend on him. You see, when we stop depending on the Lord, we depend on ourselves, and that's sin. We must depend on him for everything that we have. Maybe you need the prayers of the church. Maybe you haven't even been following the remedy, but it's here for us to follow. And I guarantee, as hard as things may get, if you follow this remedy, you will have rest, just as David wrote in Psalm 23. If you need to respond, will you please come as we stand?